right then.
Do you know what? I love that so much. I was showing it to people who really hate metal, and I just thought, oh, hey, do you know what? That is really, really good. I didn't know whether we thought of the podcast first or whether you came up with that song. And I just had this image in my head of you when you get to the palm muted chuggy bit. You just go, oh, do you know what would be really good here?
Well,
Words.
Truth be told, I did actually write that about 3 years ago.
Really?
Just for shits and giggles.
But what was it for?
Well, so me and an old friend of mine were going to start a thrash metal band at the time called Manslaughter, and at the time,
Start making Man of War jokes straight away.
Yeah, no, don't worry, we'll get into that. We've got some hot topics to cover later, but essentially we were going to start a band called Manslaughter, and that never happened. Probably because.
Do you speak to the friend anymore?
Oh, he's in America now. So.
Big time.
Yeah, big time. However, given the subject matter of what we were going to be covering, we decided to probably not tackle it anyway.
Oh, salacious.
That being said, I'm sure we'll come back to it eventually. But welcome everyone to the Ex Inferis podcast. This is a podcast about heavy metal. My name is Matthew, and with me is my co-host Tom Watson.
Hey. I think we should just take this moment as a little bit of a disclaimer that I don't want to speak for you, Matt, but just shut the fuck up for a minute. We're not metal historians.
Nor do we claim to be.
We don't claim to be.
At least not on recording.
Yeah. We are, metal
enthusiasts.
Fans. Enthusiasts is so dirty, isn't it? But if we called ourselves historians, we'd set ourselves up for a massive fall.
Well, we're going to do that anyway.
Yeah, so if anything, don't listen to us.
Yeah, take it with the biggest pinch of salt, if the sea could produce it.
Do you know what's a really good source of information? Wikipedia.
It's all right, yeah. So whatever we're going to address, just go onto the Wikipedia
just
page
wiki
and you're going to find it.
Google search. That's all that's required, really.
So we're going to be addressing our first topic. So a little bit of an additional disclaimer, as I feel like it needs to happen, is we were actually we've been threatening doing this podcast for a long time.
Years.
Yeah, and it's just taken a while, whether it's nerves, got the jitters, or just technical... Just not enough technical proficiency.
We were poor
to get it.
We couldn't afford.
We couldn't afford microphones. So so this week on Ex Inferis, we're going to be doing a few choice cuts. Thank you, from the year 1989. So we were originally going to do 1988 because we were both born in that year. And we wanted to see how jaded...
gave it away, straight away.
We wanted to see how jaded and old we were and see how those albums that were there when we got pushed into the world from betwixt our mother's loins.
Yeah.
And how they've held up. But unfortunately, because we're lazy as fuck, we've had to resort to doing it from 1989.
True.
But before we get into that, we're just going to have a quick look at the news that happened this week.
This is the news.
In the metal sphere.
Yeah.
So what have you got for me, Tom?
Firstly, I guess we should talk about Ozzy being... There's a petition online to have Ozzy Osbourne knighted. It's not a new petition. I think
it's a third attempt, isn't it?
It's a third attempt, but I think it's the same petition that came out in 2014, and it just keeps on going in waves. I don't know how that works as a petition, whether there's actually like an end date, like a deadline that you have to hit. Because you could have a petition that would have started 2 decades ago And very gradually, it just starts to be accruing all of these signatures until you get to like 1 million or something like that. And then people have to take note of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what metrics are they looking at? Are they looking at return visitors? Or is this just an accumulative? But I mean...
They do that a lot. People actually post up online saying, please sign this petition. I've already signed it 5 times.
But what website is this on?
I don't actually know what. I don't think it's a
because it's not
GoFundMe or
like
something like that.
gov.uk.
Certainly not. No. Let's have a quick look. Actually, I checked because I wanted to see how many signatures have been accrued so far.
Gov.uk has had enough traffic in the past couple of weeks,
Jesus.
and we know how petitions are going right
Yeah.
now. I've really dated this podcast.
Have you signed
now.
that
Have I signed it?
Article 50 petition?
Well, I wasn't even in the UK at the time of the original referendum. So
Does that have any relevance whatsoever?
absolutely, because I don't know whether I should chime in because I didn't chime in originally. I was in Austria at the time, and I was literally on the way back from... We got through the little customs area with my Austrian partner, and the results came through, and I was like, you just might as well turn back now.
Yeah.
There's nothing here for you.
One-way
now.
ticket.
Essentially, yes, I did sign it, but yeah.
Multiple times.
There's just world governments quaking in their boots when everyone gets on change.org.
It was change.org.
It was change.org.
So it was an organisation.
Yeah.
And so far, I think the original target to hit was 5K, and currently it is on 10,404 people have signed.
10,000.
Have you signed it?
No, I haven't signed it.
Neither
I
have
haven't
I haven't signed it yet. But
see no need to.
the thing is that
If he deserves it, he'll get it.
I think he does need some good news at the moment. He's had a pretty
Rough.
shoddy 2019 so far. He's had to cancel a number of tour dates. He contracted pneumonia, and he is now out of critical care. But
How old is he now?
he is about 41.
But he must be way older than like a Lemmy. Like Lemmy was 70.
And how old is he now? He must be like 65.
Ozzy's not destroying his body to the same level that Lemmy was, like towards the end of his death. Like he just kept going. But I have a theory that Lemmy's death, because obviously 2016 was the year of the celebrity death. I have a certain feeling that Lemmy going right at the end of 2015 was that plug that just got pulled out, and all those people that needed to die within that year were just like, well, fuck it, if he's gone, and we're going to have to go. Because he can withstand a fucking nuclear blast, so...
Or not, as transpired. But, yeah.
But, I mean, like, there are less deserving people who have received knighthoods and damehoods. Let's not leave the women out of this. Let's slam them as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can imagine, because I know that there's been a number of people who have not accepted knighthoods previously, like David Bowie being one. I know that because Keith Richards declined a CBE and then just started slamming Mick Jagger for his knighthood.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, good luck to him.
Yeah,
he's been all right so far,
Bloody good
hasn't
luck
he?
to him,
So
yeah. But the Osbournes in general have had quite a lot of attention in the past couple of weeks. Not just Ozzy, but Sharon Osbourne, I think, had an interview recently where she admitted
was it
that
she
she
trying to
asked,
get a threesome?
yeah,
or
she
something
asked Matt LeBlanc from Friends and the remake of Space,
Lost in Space.
Lost in Space, yeah. She offered Matt a threesome with Ozzy.
Right.
Don't know. We've yet to hear Ozzy's response on that one, or whether it even happened. But
Or whether he can respond.
yeah, and other than that, he's had pneumonia, and
Been a bit of a developing one recently, but Chris Fenn,
yeah,
who
you
is
probably know
now
more about this than I do.
ex-Slipknot member, although it seems to be very ambiguous as to whether he has actually left or not, because some of the comments made, not just by him, I mean, he seems to be pretty much assured himself that he's out of the band, whereas the other members of Slipknot seem to, I don't know whether they're just trying to play that card of being like, we never wanted him to leave, but now he already has.
Yeah.
But so, I mean, as the story goes, apparently Corey Taylor and what's his name? Michael Sean. It's the clown one, basically. It's the clown one. They have been accused of starting extra, I guess, essentially merch companies across the interwebs and taking a larger cut of the profits. And he's in fact gone on to then say that he's actually not been properly compensated for even years prior to that, being in the band and going on tour and recording. So he's been given a sort of take it or leave it contract because they're about to go in and record their 6th album.
Is he going to be involved with that one at all?
Well, I thought it was already in progress. So if he hasn't been involved now, then yeah, I doubt whether he's. I think it's probably going to steam ahead. I don't think that they're going to sit about and wait for them to come to some kind of agreement as to how they sell T-shirts on their big cartel. Right?
They're not going to wait for a second-class citizen to to arrive to knock around a few pots and pans.
Yeah, and I mean, here's the thing with that is the fact that like I am all about making sure that all band members are absolutely treated equal. But there's a lot of band members, isn't there? And I don't know whether all of them are quite shouldering the same responsibilities as others in terms of the writing and also... Because, I mean, at the end of the day, I think quite a lot of a lot of the appeal of Slipknot is that kind of experience performance thing. Like, they're not necessarily contributing to it, but when you go see them live... Just the idea of seeing... You get it. Yeah, just seeing like these 8 people on stage going mental. I mean, I don't know whether you've watched it, but there is a video on YouTube, which I don't know what they were doing. I think it was like some Spanish music festival. But it was the worst mixed. Because I'm pretty sure they have their little like rider things set up before they go in. They're like, just don't mic up the percussionists. Like, apart from the kegs, you can do the kegs... But just don't do those big tom things that they're playing. They're jumping all about because they're going to ruin your mics anyway. Yeah.
So that's Chris over there.
That's Chris.
That's Corey. If Chris comes up to you and just says, "Oh, can you just help me with the mix?"
Just turn it down.
Yeah, just ignore it.
But this video is nothing apart from the percussion, a little bit of drums from Joey Jordison for reference.
Yeah.
And
for context.
Yeah, for context. And the DJ. And it is the worst thing I've ever heard. Like, they're not in time whatsoever. They're not in time with each other, and I don't think they're in time with themselves. But would you want to get rid of that extra element? Because there is that... I mean, now everyone knows what they look like behind the mask. So I think that's the one last gimmicky thing that they've got going on, is that... performance element, and I don't know whether they could just get away with it with just the clown.
And it also, going back to what you said about a democracy within a band, like I think an exception to that rule should be someone like Happy Mondays and Bez.
Like,
if he's getting equal pay as the musicians, there's something wrong there.
Yeah.
Right? But Chris Fenn, I mean, he seems like he would regard himself as one of the founding members of Slipknot.
Yeah. I mean, who are we to say that he's not like contributing just as much as
and that's
any
what,
other member?
I think that's what his lawyer was saying as well. The thing that I find so funny about this story is that every article that you see of it online there's a picture of Chris Fenn in his gimp mask, looking perceptibly sad, just in the eyes.
It's just the nature of the mask.
He's just looking at it like, please feel sorry for me.
Looking like a bit of a dickhead.
Yeah.
Boom, boom.
Yeah, well done. That's very good.
Thank you.
Very good.
But I mean, because I mean, obviously he's been living off this money for the last, I mean, how long have they been together? Like, actually, it would have been 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, they released their self-titled in 99. So yeah, it would have been 20 years. And I don't know, where would you go from here? Because obviously Joey Jordison went to Murder Dolls, but the less said about that, the better.
Are you sure about that?
I can't do it. I'm not going to do it. I refuse to do it.
Aren't you going to defend that album to the grave?
We'll put a whole episode towards Murder Dolls and Wednesday 13.
Oh, do you have to?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Well, when we're scraping the bottom when we're scraping the bottom of the barrel or the keg in this. Come on, man. That was good. But yeah, I just can't see where he's going to go.
Rating your own jokes. Unbelievable.
I just can't see where he's going to go from here. Like, what possible thing is he going to have on his resume for starting a new band? I would assume that he'd probably start a new band. Other than that, or he's going to be probably bar backing in a pub somewhere. Just downstairs with the kegs. Like, Chris, are you down there? Bang, 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 bang,
bang. Speaking of lawsuits, very quickly, did you hear about David Silveria from of ex-Korn fame counter-suing Korn?
They're all getting very, very litigious recently, aren't they?
Yeah, they really are. But have you
litigious?
What's with all these new metal bands just getting really, really...
They've hit that age, though, haven't they? Like, what, they were, like...
Bubbles burst.
Yeah, 18 to 25-year-olds. They're having a whale of a time. Now they're hitting, like, what? I think Fred Durst is 49, I want to say.
Yeah.
Like, they're getting on.
Yeah.
They're a bit more savvy-minded in terms of the law.
Wayne Static is...
Dead?
17?
Forever at one age. R.I.P. God bless.
Yeah. In a way.
Not his guitarist, though.
No. He left the band, I think...
2014?
2000. Oh, shit. Yeah,
no, it was a while ago.
Yeah. It's the allegations, the legislation that's come like later on than that. And he's called Fieldy a cowardly little bitch. And he's claimed that the current drummer lacks groove and stuff like that. And he sued them. He sued Korn due to sort of unpaid earnings or something like that. And then he tried to like circumvent the ban by getting his royalties from, I can't remember what they're called, like Sound Exchange or something like that. It's like so back and forth, and basically, no one's getting any royalties.
I think it's pretty simple. You know the reason why he left Korn was because apparently he was leaving to be like a underwear model.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Because he's well, I haven't seen the pigs. I haven't gone into that Google hole long enough. But yeah, he used to be like a relatively good-looking dude, and from the still shot that I saw against this news article, I think the money has dried up slightly. So I think I know the genesis of why this has come about, and he's wanting some of that sweet Korn money.
Yeah, because he claimed it was breach of contract or something like that. But then he said he would reunite with Korn for a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremony.
Mm. And he got denied.
What is he doing?
Oh, no idea. I mean, I don't know why you would... people don't just invite themselves back in.
No, they really don't. And the sort of the karma in the band, like imagine having that first conversation, like first interaction with Fieldy for one. It's just like, yeah, I did call you a cowardly little bitch. But do you mind if I play drums for a little while? So David Silveria there.
On a bit more of a weightier topic, something that has been quite controversial that's come out this week is the new video by the band Rammstein, who I've never been like a particularly big fan of.
No.
I see the appeal. I just don't really get it because all their songs sound exactly the same.
Well, it's in German.
Yeah, it's in German, so yeah. So we thought that it would be worth tackling this particular subject because on our first episode, the thing that we really want to get into is allegations of anti-Semitism and the Holocaust.
Yes, please.
So have you had a chance to watch the video?
What, Triumph of the Will?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've watched the video. And I don't want to sound like a contrarian here, because I do think they have overstepped the mark. But within context of watching the video and the history and trajectory of Germany is what they're... I mean, the song is called Deutschland, and they have a play on Albeit McFry in the video as well. But in context of the song, the meaning behind the song, and also just the video from start to end, I don't think it is inherently anti-Semitic. I do think it is crass, and I do think it's immoral, and I wouldn't put it in my video if I was doing a video on Deutschland. So there's two sides of it here. I don't know what take you would have on that.
Yeah, I think that I pretty much fall in exactly the same kind of camp. Like when I watched it,
Mein Kampf.
Yeah, I'm leaving it. The thing is that, art is supposed to get a reaction out of people, and they are a band that have been trying to get a reaction out of people for a long time. They're also a band that has come from a country that, in the not too distant past, has had some tumultuous times, to say the least. Yeah. And I mean, it is that thing of if anyone's going to say it, it's going to have to be someone from that country. If they're going to address it, they have to almost be self-reflective. And I kind of feel like they have, but then again, it's just the execution of it. Like, I don't think anything should be off the table.
I think there's a fine line between acknowledging your past and then parodying it.
Yeah.
Or parading it around as if it's like, I don't know. There was something about that, especially that very controversial scene.
Yeah.
Where it was tasteless, where they could have addressed it in a little bit more of a subtle way, but being Rammstein and probably aiming towards the Pornhub demographic, they thought that was probably the best way in which they would get publicity and they get a lot of promotion out of it. And it has worked in their favour, because a lot of people that don't listen to Rammstein, people that aren't...
I mean, people are talking about it on The Guardian, like...
It's
yeah,
funny,
media outlets who would never really address...
we're addressing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're at the forefront of media. So.
Exactly, yeah.
But yeah, I don't think... I think there's been a very reactionary approach, like the immediate need to condemn something, because it is such a sensitive topic. I think for me, it's a no.
Yeah,
in the grand scheme of things.
I'll give it a good hard no.
No.
Yeah.
But
the song is fucking awful.
Oh yeah, it just sounds exactly the same as everything they've done previously. And 9 minutes.
9 minutes.
I mean...
The intro alone.
I mean,
the credits.
So this is a quote from Felix Klein, who's the commissioner of anti-Semitism in Germany. He says, "I consider this a tasteless exploitation of artistic freedom."
Which it is.
And yeah, absolutely. But I can think of worse things that I've done that could be considered a tasteless exploitation.
Are you going to address them now?
We'll bring it up at another time.
After.
I need content and I need to pace myself.
When that red light isn't flashing.
Yeah, I need to pace myself across this podcast.
Yeah.
If you look at the lyrics of it, and they have aligned themselves with more left-wing tendencies. Like they've previously addressed that they consider themselves a left-wing band, even though they have all the imagery. But that is just shock value, and every artist to some extent is going to engage. Yeah, it is cheap. And it kind of almost feels like it shadows over what they're actually trying to produce.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, if you look at some of the lyrics behind it, it's just, I mean, that's the thing is that the lyrics don't translate particularly well. You've got Germany, my heart in flames, want to love you, want to damn you. Germany, your breath is cold, so young and yet so old. Germany.
Profound.
Yeah.
Rhymes.
No hot take on that one.
Rhymes work.
But yeah, I think that you can't just watch the video and then come to a conclusion. Probably you can about the execution of it, but not necessarily the meaning behind it. I think you have to take it as a whole.
Yeah, I fear that when metal and other fringe genres and extreme music and underground music, whenever it comes into the forefront of people's psyche and it's in arm's reach of more of a mainstream audience. And I know that sounds really arrogant to say that, but for the most part, underground music is underground for a very specific reason. So whenever it becomes something that catches the eye of reference man, so to speak, so like the white middle class right wing male, it's going to be misinterpreted, and it's going to become something that's almost too dangerous for public consumption. And I think the problem is with Rammstein is that you and I can look at that, considering that we listen to extreme music all the time, and we can
We're familiar with
we can
the
see it
imagery.
within context
Yeah.
of what it is intended, and we can say it is tasteless. And whilst it might not be inherently anti-Semitic, it is still wrong, as what we've addressed. But a lot of other people that don't listen to extreme music are going to find the extremity in that video so strong and so severe that it's going to have some sort of negative impact on a smaller community of music listeners or metalheads.
Yeah.
And things
So
like that.
well-intentioned, just poorly executed.
Poorly executed
And-
and probably not good in the long run.
And probably rubbish music as well.
Probably definitely rubbish
music.
music. Yeah. Finally, I just want to very briefly skim over The Dirt.
I have no interest in watching this film whatsoever.
Yeah, but it's passive watching, isn't it?
Yeah.
So-
but I've got so much queued up in my Netflix queue already.
Yeah. I mean, I have watched it.
You have watched it?
Yeah.
But you were a Motley Crue fan
No.
anyway?
No. I think they are scum, subhuman scum. I genuinely do think they should not be lauded as much as they are. If you take them individually, they're not the best people.
No.
So Tommy Lee this week has reacted rather poorly to a review of The Dirt.
So not reacted poorly to The Dirt, but to
No,
a
he
review
he
of The Dirt.
fucking loves it.
Oh, really?
They love it. Motley Crue are bang into it. But yeah, Tommy Lee's retorted to this review of The Dirt. I can't remember what the source was of it, but he tweeted online the critic, and the critic quite rightly sort of preempted people before going into watching The Dirt to not watch The Dirt. He basically said, "Let me save you some time. Don't watch it."
Yeah.
And Tommy Lee did not react to this particularly well at all.
Oh, it's that Rotten Tomatoes thing, isn't it? Of people changing their perception of the film and
Yeah.
arguing whether they're even going to watch it. But if it's on Netflix, it's readily available. So
Exactly. So Tommy Lee said, basically, what is this guy talking about? He doesn't know anything about the film. I think
maybe he's a film critic.
I think he called him a little girl
Okay.
in the tweet, like, little girl, you weren't there.
Okay,
You
well-
don't know what it was like.
Well, don't let him get too close to him.
It just further reinforces that these
Allegedly,
individuals
sorry.
in Motley Crue are misogynists. They're not in touch with sort of what's politically correct and how to present themselves and how to sustain some sort of like respectable reputation online. But yeah,
But what's your opinion on the film?
I watched it. I really hate them. I really, really despise Motley Crue. My hatred for people sometimes comes out as sort of intrigue because it's one of those things where like if something frustrates you so much, you want to delve into it further. Yeah, exactly. It's like some form of like
Self-flagellation.
So Motley Crue have become my new sort of
Go-to band.
Go-to band to channel all my disdain and anger. And from that, I watched an interview online whilst they were recording the music video for Looks That Kill. And they were speaking to Nikki Sixx, and Nikki Sixx was basically like, so the theme for the shoot is it's not set in the past and it's not set in the future. It's sort of like somewhere else, and it could be like perceived as some sort of like post-Holocaust or whatever. His words, Holocaust or whatever.
This is becoming a reoccurring theme now.
Yeah, and then he suddenly turns into fucking Patrick Stewart from The Extras, and he's like, and there's like tons of women everywhere, it's like, and all their clothes fall off. And then he said, and then there's this goddess, and together we sort of make the looks that kill, which means nothing, absolutely nothing. Whoever came up with that treatment should be fucking sacked.
I don't know. I think I'm probably going to give it a hard miss.
I think you should just watch it. Just if you have a certain disposition like me, where you like to fuel your pissed offness.
Yes, yeah. I think if I get to the end of the Office within this week, then maybe I'll give it a go.
Anyway,
I guess we should probably get into the bulk of this week's episode.
The bulk,
the huge, vast bulk,
the mulch. Let's get into the mulch of it. So, 1989.
What year?
What a year.
So we have the Berlin Wall coming down.
Woo!
Yeah, we've got the death of Japanese Emperor Hirohito. Woo!
Yep.
And the first liver transplant.
Really?
If you needed that. Yeah, apparently.
I didn't know that one.
I mean, other than that, what else we got from that year?
Well, it's the end of communism.
Okay.
There was the NATO enlargement.
Yep.
This is one of my favourite little factual nuggets for you. Ayatollah Khomeini issued a fatwa on Salman Rushdie.
Oh, it came out that year, didn't it?
And then died. That's just like his like last hurrah, and then it's just like, fuck this. Do what you want. The Velvet Revolution. Okay. Taylor Swift was born.
Was she?
Yeah.
And with that, Star is Born.
Which gives that's Lady Gaga.
Yeah.
Which gives a completely different perspective to her album 1989.
Did you not know that that's why it was called that? Jesus. That is a fantastic album as well.
Yeah,
we're going to have to cut that out of this.
No, we don't. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade was the highest grossing film.
Okay, yeah.
Cinema Paradiso.
Was that the racist one? No, that was Temple of Doom, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was very racist. Yeah. But one of the biggest things that happened in '89, especially for metal music, was the Grammys introduced the best hard rock, heavy metal recording category. And
they're still ongoing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It wasn't unceremoniously retracted like the.
I mean, it fucking should have been after '89.
The Oscar, was it new popular film or whatever it was?
What was that?
Did you know about that? Like last year, they were going to introduce new popular film, which was essentially their excuse to put comic book films in the Oscars because no one gave a shit. Do you really want to go there? No, we'll do that
for
another time. And
I really want to.
Tom's absolute hatred for everything pop culture.
No, it's not pop culture. It's just. I don't want to do it. I literally don't want to do it right now. So yeah, Within the category,
Not like this.
not like this, please. Within the category for best hard rock and heavy metal recording were Jane's Addiction, Iggy Pop, I believe AC/DC were in the category as well, and then you've got Metallica.
Who is shoo-in? Surely.
Yeah. And finally, within that category, to complete the category, was a little-known prog rock band whom I bloody love, Jethro Tull.
Oh.
Who I thought had been... Inactive is the wrong word, as definitely not within the zeitgeist of pop culture of the time. I think it took Anchorman to bring them back, to resuscitate
And flute solos.
Yeah. Aqualung! So Alice Cooper presented the award. He did a dummy run during rehearsals during the day, which included a card with sort of a card in an envelope, exactly like how it would be on the night. And he opened the card, and there would be a name imprinted on the card. Now, that name did not represent the winner of the night, and it wasn't supposed to, at least. The name imprinted on the card is never usually the winner in those circumstances. They just put any other fucking name on there. And the card for the dummy run read Jethro Tull. Who...
What a fun in joke.
See,
and then little did he know.
They're not even the underdogs. They just shouldn't be there. In fact, they weren't there for the award ceremony itself. And I believe, from what Ian Anderson said, is that their label was so convinced that they weren't going to win the category that they didn't want to pay for them to fly out to LA to accept an award that they weren't going to win.
It's just modesty and humility, isn't it?
I mean, it's very thrifty.
Yeah, those are good traits of Grammy Award winners for hard rock and metal performance.
Yeah. Well, lo and behold, on the night, during the ceremony, Alice Cooper comes up. He announces the nominees and then announces the winner. He opens up the envelope. He looks down at the card, and apparently he has to double take because the winner was not the bookie's favourite, Metallica, but it was, lo and behold, bloody good prog rock band, wholesome prog rock band Jethro Tull.
It just doesn't make any sense, does it?
It really doesn't.
Does, but it also doesn't.
It really doesn't. And a lot of people, I think even Jethro Tull, were surprised by that. And Alice Cooper was like, am I reading this correctly? Yes, it is. It's Jethro
Looks
Tull.
to producers.
Yeah,
side
just like looking
stage.
around saying, this is the dummy card. You've given me the dummy card. Apparently, Metallica were already standing up, ready to accept.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I mean, which is
Little ass.
incredibly presumptuous
Yeah.
of them. Just like looking there, like walking up the stairs and then having to like do a 180 and turn back. I think apparently
Kirk's
people
oblivious.
asked.
He's still going up there.
Yeah. James is still up there, pissed as a fire. Just like, I'll take it anyway. But Alice Cooper had to accept the award on behalf of Jethro Tull. And on the topic of winning, Ian Anderson, the frontman of Jethro Tull, said, Aqualung! No, he said, when people ask, why do you think you won? Because you need answers for something like this.
Yeah, absolutely.
He said, perhaps, and this is
Didn't even prepare a speech.
Quite a defensive answer. He said, well, perhaps we were 5 nice men who had never won a Grammy before. The voting members of NARAS, the National Academy of Recording Arts and Sciences, if you needed to know that abbreviation in full, decided we should receive a nomination. It's a peer group award from people in the industry, producers, musicians, record company professionals who give the award. It's not 6 panelists on the X Factor.
When was this quote?
I think it's quite recent because of the X Factor. I
thought he was just some kind of seer that was looking into the future.
Yeah. So Lars has something to say.
Of course,
about it as well. He had a number of things to say. To be honest with you, they start off quite amenable, like he's quite accepting about it, and then we get into Lars territory. The brain starts, like the cogs start turning, and then they start tightening the screws. So Lars said, "Should I do his voice?"
Yeah, please.
Some 3 weeks before the awards.
What the fuck is that?
Some 3 weeks before the awards, all those who are in touch, the critics, the day-to-day involved people, assume that Metallica would walk away with the award. It's easy for the in-touch people to think that, but remember that most of the Academy who vote for the nominees are in the age group of 40 to 60 and are very much less in tune with what goes on in the music scene. So... Passive-aggressive, not really accepting it, but sounding like he's conceding to the fact that they didn't win. Followed by, let's face it, they really fucked up. Jethro Tull getting best hard rock heavy metal recording. I mean, come on!
He's not the most intimidating human being, though. He's not...
No, in fact, he sounds intimidated most
yes.
of the time.
But I mean, it seems like following that, neither of the parties acted particularly well. Apparently, following that, Jethro Tull's record label took out a Billboard magazine advert, full page, might I add, which is a picture of a flute. And we all know that the flute is the staple of the Jethro Tull sound.
Sure.
With the slogan saying, "The flute is a heavy, metal instrument."
Oh, so it's heavy. It's physically heavy.
It's not, though, is it? So in fact,
it's one of the lightest.
Yeah. So in fact, that they've pretty much lied. They've lied to us. They've lied to the Grammys.
Oh my god, I never thought about it like that.
However, of course, there was a retort from Metallica, who came back with a sticker. You know, you get the stickers of, "From the band who released blah, 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 blah. Producer of blah, 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 blah." They just said, and on Justice for All, they had a sticker reading, "Grammy Award losers." Just
fucking losers.
And that is, of course, in capitals. That was the only way that I could.
So it's a bit like Al Gore saying, "I'm Al Gore, I was the president of the United States," followed by much rapturous laughter in Inconvenient Truth.
Yeah.
So what we can take away from this is Metallica are the Al Gore of the metal scene. I guess we should start talking about some records that came out.
Yeah, so we've cultivated a few records that we kind of, not necessarily the best records of that year.
No.
Not necessarily the most influential, but ones that we think definitely deserve a look in, because probably not that many people, whilst they might be aware of the band, they might not be aware of this particular record, one in particular with me. So my first record is a band called Repulsion, who are a grindcore band from Flint, Michigan. So have you had a run with this album before? Or?
Yeah, so it's not a record that I listen to on repeat or anything like that.
I don't blame you.
I've listened to it a few times, but from me, with the sort of minimum sort of time I've had with it, and from what I know about Repulsion, is that they were sort of intrinsic in merging hardcore audiences with metal audiences, which is quite a difficult thing. And I know we could talk about crossover another time, but there was something about Repulsion where they were like wholly accepted by both communities, which I think nearing like in late 80s was more rare, or maybe the elitism came sort of after that, but there was something about Repulsion as a band. I deeply respect them for what they did for both metal and more specifically hardcore punk music.
Yeah, so the record in question is called Horrified, and obviously it came out in 1989. But
did it?
Yeah, funnily enough. But the reason why I bring up the fact that it came out in 1989 is because this band are the Ross and Rachel of death metal, grindcore, hardcore punk, because they are on and off again throughout the entirety of the run up to this album. So they actually started in 1984, and they released. Tried to record a demo in 1986. Which I believe was called Slaughter of the Innocent. But they didn't actually release this album until 1989 because they were on and off again. Two of the members actually ended up leaving to, I think it was, who we got here? So it's Scott Carson, who's the vocalist and bassist, and Matt Olivio, who was the other guitarist. So they started in 84. Recorded this demo EP, Slaughter of the Innocents, in 1986. And then in between that time, they actually ended up buggering off to Florida to go join the band Death. With Chuck Schuldiner. However, that didn't work out because they made a swift exit within the same year and returned back to Flint, Michigan. And they cite it as creative differences.
Right.
But to be honest, having listened to the vast majority of Death's back catalogue and also Repulsion's one album that they put out, I think they're slightly on different leagues in terms of technical proficiency.
Right. So basically what you're trying to say in a roundabout way is that the members of Repulsion were not good enough to be in Death.
Don't think they were there. I don't think they met the mark. But luckily they did come back because this record was released following that.
Yeah.
And then they broke up again shortly after in the same year in 1989. So, I mean, I've been a big fan of grindcore for, I don't know, I guess I probably listened to things like Scum by Napalm Death. Probably got that record when I was like 14, maybe. And there's a big difference between this and, say, some more of the European scene, where it still feels like there's a heavier emphasis on the more punk side of stuff, especially in terms of the delivery of it. So with Repulsion, it feels more like when I listen to the vocals, they're not that lower kind of guttural thing that that you would get from early Napalm Death and other bands such as like Bolt Thrower when they first started. But yeah, it has more like a void kind of feel to it, like that kind of sneering punk, but it's still, and it's not so much grindy as in with the blast beats. It's more of a kind of a DBT kind of discharge, disclose kind of feel to it.
I think it's amazing how many acts, especially like pinnacle death metal bands, like if you call back to any of the classic death metal acts, how many of them sort of what they were trying to do was separate themselves from thrash, and they were looking more towards the punk scene, like bands like Discharge, bands like Crass almost as well, and things like that. It just seemed to have more, it seemed to speak to them more.
It felt more dangerous, certainly. Yeah. Like, I think that around that era, around that late 80s era, I think it was probably feeling quite tame.
Well, I think thrash was starting to become quite commercial because of bands like Metallica and Slayer.
Yeah, I mean, and Justice for All came out the year before, and that's when Metallica were kind of introduced to wider mainstream via they had their first music video, which was One.
Yeah.
So
Amazing.
it was probably feeling slightly toothless at that point. So I can imagine that they were looking at the punk scene and very much like the UK punk scene as well.
But also, I think they were looking to DC.
Yeah.
So, like, they were looking at Black Flag, they were looking at Minor Threat and Bad Brains and seeing what they were doing, and also seeing that convergence of genres, especially with bands like Bad Brains, where they thought, well, if we could probably set up something completely different here.
Yeah, and I mean, it's difficult not to bring something like Siege into the fold,
Yeah.
even though they are quite. I mean, their album Drop Dead was 1981, I think. So it'd been going for quite some time. But the thing that's kind of exceptional about Repulsion is probably the lyrical content. So with them, it's all about horror movies and gore. And to be honest, I'm probably not actually that keen on that kind of lyrical content. Like, I do tend to skew more towards like a Napalm Death.
So you're not into like Deicide and stuff like that?
Yeah, but I think it's probably within the context of the band. So if it's something that has that more punk edge, to not have that kind of indignation behind it, just it doesn't hold as well together. And yeah, but I mean, and they were kind of, I guess they were one of the first bands kind of bring that into the kind of grindcore scene. I mean, that had already been apparent in the death metal scene.
Yeah.
It's difficult to ignore the amount of influence that they had. I mean, especially with the bands that ended up going on to cover them, and in fact, probably people that they regard as their peers. So Napalm Death ended up covering Maggots in Your Coffin. You had bands like Mortician, who are probably the prime example of those kind of lyrics. They covered the title track Horrified, and then you've got Goat Killer, who did The Stench of Burning Death. And then it's also worth mentioning the fact that Entombed covered the song Black Breath, which actually has a knock-on effect because the band Black Breath, who I don't know where they've gone in recent years, they were absolutely fantastic band and seem to have disappeared off the face of the earth. But they took their name from that track and took all their riffs from Entombed.
As well,
So
yeah.
But yeah, it's a bit of a punishing listen. I don't think I'd recommend it to everyone.
How long is it?
So it is. I mean, that's the thing is with a record like that, in which like if variety be the spice of life, that is not the case with this record, because if you've heard the first 5 tracks, you've probably heard the entire record beginning to end, and it is a 30-minute record. So it does become slightly taxing after a while. But I think to not appreciate it for what it is, and kind of understand it in the vocabulary of that kind of music, I think is a disservice to the genre.
So what are you saying? That it's too
I'm
fucking long?
I'm saying that it's way too long. But they do fill that gap for me between something that's far more aggressive, such as Napalm Death, and then going into the more punk kind of elements such as Discharge. Like, they seem to fall quite nicely into that.
Pretty crusty.
Yeah, pretty crusty, but not a lot of crustiness in terms of the imagery to kind of back it up.
No.
Of this kind of grindcore, everything got amped up, and now it's like that. At that point, it was a lot more about the aggression, and there was a certain kind of sloppiness to their production and to the playing itself. But whereas when you hit stuff like a Zook, and it's just so tight and so on the mark, and almost to the point in which it's kind of given itself a full identity as grindcore. Because I remember when I first started getting into grindcore and I was getting into crust, it was difficult for me to kind of differentiate between a few genres.
Yeah.
But now it's a lot more easy to kind of not necessarily pigeonhole, but at least identify those genres. But I mean, they're still going. They got back together. They're actually playing Obscene Extreme Festival in Czech Republic, which actually the lineup looks great. And if I could afford it and stand being in a field with crusties for 3 days, I'd probably enjoy.
That's below the studded belt.
It's fine, yeah. The bullet belt.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, good luck to them. They've managed to...
Bloody good luck to them.
Yeah, they've managed to build a 30-year career off releasing one album, followed by maybe like a couple of EPs, but nothing that's actually substantial.
The dream.
Like,
that is the dream, isn't it?
They're just milking it.
Yeah, they really are milking it, yeah. Pestilence. Consuming Impulse. Fantastic record. I think a classic for very just reasons. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, Pestilence aren't a band that were particularly on my radar that much, so I'm hoping that you can give me some insight. I am definitely going to check this out afterwards. Probably should have checked it out before, but
No.
Let's address the elephant in the room that is our professionalism with this podcast. To which I started having a freak out, going, "I've got too much to look up. I've got too much to look up." And I was like, "I'm just not even going to touch your stuff. So you're going to have to educate me
on certain things." So
yeah, this is a journey.
It was recorded at Music Lab in Berlin. It was originally released on RC Records, originally on tape, and then Road Racer released it on vinyl just slightly late, like a couple of months or so later than that. So Road Racer is Road Runner Records. Do you know why they were called Road Racer first?
No, tell me.
Because of a lawsuit with the actual Roadrunner.
As
animation.
Really?
Yeah. So they thought that they'd swerve any great lawsuit, which they would most certainly.
Who's that? Warner
lose.
Brothers.
Yeah.
Yeah, they would have sued them into.
They would have sued them out the arses. So So until the lawsuit, until it was all agreed and everything was finalised, they had to call themselves Road Racer, and now they are. Called the name that they still ordain today, which is Roadrunner Records, which is quite interesting.
Who've now branched out slightly. They're doing comedy albums, and Doug Stanhope is on there. Like, I don't even know who's still signed to Roadrunner, because I know that Glassjaw had a big, like, real falling out with that record label.
I think that's the common trend with a lot of these bands on records like Roadrunner, records like Earache, is that you anticipate the founders of these labels to be sort of akin with the creativity and the creative output of the bands that they represent. You think everyone would be on sort of equal ground with each other. With Pestilence, like they were released on that small death metal label, RC, and they were still called Road Racer. So they were still very much a young label. They might have had aspirations and ideas above their station, but you wouldn't assume them to be money men and businessmen from the off, especially when they're releasing death metal music. So it's a strange dichotomy there between creativity and money. Anyway, Consuming Impulse was produced by Harris Johns, who was also involved with Voivod production, Killing Technology, and Creator.
Also, interestingly enough, there's been a few ties between records for this episode, but he also produced one of the records that I'm going to be talking about shortly after this.
Yeah,
so don't
reveal it now, just in case someone might guess. So, Pestilence, formed by Patrick Mamelli on guitar and bass, Patrick Utovic on guitar.
Well done.
Thank you. Martin Van Jeroen was recruited for vocals for Consuming Impulse. Marco Fodis on drums. I believe they all shared songwriting credits for Consuming Impulse as well. And I think you can really differentiate between the members as to who wrote what throughout the whole thing, which I'll get into in a little bit. So one of the most interesting aspects of Consuming Impulse isn't actually the music, but it's the artwork for the album Consuming Impulse, which is now a classic.
Yeah. I mean, on first glance, it's not the most attractive album cover.
Yeah, and we don't mean that in it's so brutal, it's disgusting.
Yeah,
as in it's just pretty poor.
Yeah.
So the original cover art that was commissioned by the band and sent over to Road Racer was it depicted a group of people eating each other, consuming each other. And then at the last minute before the release, without the band's permission, Road Racer or Roadrunner, it replaced the image with what we see today, which is the image of close-up of a man's face, screaming, with ants slowly...
Fire ants, by the way.
Fire ants apparently consuming him. And ants don't really consume
I mean,
anything.
in all honesty, neither of those covers look particularly...
The original cover art is...
Slightly...
It's not great.
No.
It shows women and like eating each other and savages, apparently from what it seems like, just slowly consuming one another
That
in
guy's
varying
eating his
ways.
brain.
It's not a particularly offensive
No.
image, the original cover artwork. Especially, I mean, Roadrunner Records...
So did they actually request it to be changed then?
Yeah, so, well,
Out
they
of
didn't
poor
request
taste
it.
or poor...
No, they didn't notify Pestilence that they were going to change the artwork. Pestilence found out once
Right.
the album had been released.
So they didn't even commission it?
No, they didn't. They didn't agree with any changes to the artwork. And then there was a lot of to and froing with the band and the label afterwards, because Pestilence, I think quite rightly, were very shocked to see their album on the stands without the artwork that they originally commissioned to Road Racer. And it is kind of weird because Road Racer got in touch with the band post-album release and said it was too aggressive, too brutal for an American audience, which is bizarre, for one, because Pestilence aren't really aiming to appeal to a wide audience anyway in their sound. I think that's quite indicative in the music that they create. And also, Road Racer in 1986, so 3 years before Consuming Impulse was released, they released an Angel Witch record, self-titled, which depicts sort of a naked woman with an obscured face wielding a knife, which to me, at least, seems a little bit more controversial than that of an animated, sort of cartoonish looking artwork that shows people eating each other. So it's a little bit strange. And then later, in about 1992, Roadrunner, which I believe it was called by that point, they released that Typo Negative record with Peter Steele's anal sphincter on the front of it. So like, there's there's a bit of a paradox there, isn't there?
I mean, like, I'm just trying to think of other instances in which, like, a record label has kind of stepped in and said, absolutely not. And the only one that kind of comes to my mind, like, from the get-go, is probably Mediocre Generica by Leftover Crack. Because, I mean, originally it was going to be called, I think the album was going to be called Shoot the Kids in School? Or Kill the Kids in School? But obviously, because America is fucking mental,
Yeah.
and that shit is going on quite often, And who was that? That was Hellcat who put that out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Which
so-
is, isn't that
So Tim Armstrong.
Armstrong is
Yeah, so Tim Armstrong was a little bitch and flaked out.
Is that all right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Can you say
it's
little
all right?
bitch?
I'm going. Well, if Dave,
I'm gonna call
if
you
I made
out.
Dave from Korn can call Fieldy a little bitch, then I can call.
That doesn't make him a good person.
No, well, neither am I. So let's just
okay,
steam
fine.
ahead. But yeah, so they have ended up stepping in and changed it. Well, forced them to change their album title, and after that, Leftover Crack migrated to Fat Wreck, wasn't it?
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then following that, they did Fuck World Trade, which had a picture of Tony Blair and George Bush pouring
Topical.
Yeah, pouring petrol on top of the World Trade Center. So, yeah.
It's subtle,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Do you think this was just like a piece of like leftover artwork from one of their mates? He was doing a doodle in the back.
What, the
It was
original or
yeah, it was the new one.
the new one? The only thing that is known of the new one is that it was
Do you know who
by
did
a
it?
graphic artist called Squeal.
Right. Okay.
That's it.
Yeah. That says it all, doesn't it?
Yeah, I tried to do a Nardwar and find out more about Squeal, but there doesn't seem to be a great deal of information available online about Squeal. Ironically, the artwork has become a bit of a staple image in the death metal scene. So onto the music itself. Pestilence were always the band striving to be the European answer to death and Infernal Majesty to a certain extent as well, which to me, especially during their younger career, so I think they formed in about 86 and they had one record before Consuming Impulse. And they were always trying to sound like other acts. It was only later in their career where they really forged a Pestilence sound. And also their relationship with the label dictated the creative output of Pestilence to a certain degree, from which in their album Spheres, which was, I believe, the last record they released on Road Runner Records, I think it was in 96, I could be so wrong there. It has influences of free jazz and it has all these other elements that have been like just thrown into that record, and it completely changed the sound. Roadrunner despised it and dropped them straight away, which was almost their intent in the first place for Pestilence. So there was always this tumultuous relationship with the label that they were on, especially with the changing of the artwork and things like that for Consuming Impulse.
I mean, that would be a kind of nail in the coffin, wouldn't it, for many bands?
Exactly, yeah. But they continue to release music today, and it's actually all really of a certain standard, like a very, very strong standard, the music that they're releasing today. So you should definitely check them out throughout their career anyway. But yeah, the Consuming Impulse, more specifically, it does sound like sort of death B-side tracks, almost like not demo death tracks, but like there is an element of it that's like, okay, they want to sound like death, or they probably had a meeting just beforehand saying, okay, we want to sound like death. How can we achieve that in a record? And the record itself is very dirty in terms of the production values and things like that. And I believe it was intentional for the sound of Consuming Impulse to sound that sort of dirty, almost crusty, was almost intentional by the band themselves. What they did was they had an idea. Patrick specifically said he had an idea to make it sound really dirty and it hadn't been done before. They put a flanger over both guitar signals throughout the whole album.
So it sounds like a plane taking off.
Yeah,
throughout
so,
the entire
and it does. And it sort of, he said it was completely unheard of to do something like that at the time.
Good reason.
Yeah, for good reason. And it probably hasn't been repeated that much ever since. And he said, the sound is all over the album. It's not too dominant there, but it makes the album sound really, really dirty, which is what it does. Anyway, Martin Van Drunen, he left the band after the release to join Asphyx. And the band members actually accused Drunen of being unprofessional on stage during Consuming Impulse tours. They said he was an alcoholic and that he was very arrogant, to which Van Drunen vehemently denies that. And what's funny about Van Drunen's performance throughout Consuming Impulse is that his vocal inflection is classic now, like that sound, that very guttural sound that he had. But the vocal inflection was actually more of a practical solution to the exhaustive pace of their debut, the
Maleficarum. Hammer of the Witches.
Yeah, exactly. According to Van Drunen, is that he literally couldn't keep up with that in live performances, so he changed his vocal inflection for Consuming Impulse, and I think it definitely shows throughout that record. Another little tidbit, which I think is quite funny, is that the band had to buy copies of the record from Roadrunner for friends and family.
Wow.
They were given one.
You say that, but I have been in a band previously that has had to buy records off their own record label just to actually have some for personal possession.
It's unbelievable.
Which is craziness.
Capitalism at it.
Under the
at its
hoof.
best. A seminal record.
Absolutely. So moving on, and I think it's probably good to go into this one because of the ties that it has to your previous record.
Okay.
Is Sodom and the album Agent Orange. So for anyone who isn't aware of Sodom were still are a thrash band from Germany. However, they didn't start that way.
What, as German?
No. Germania, we learnt about that this week from our friends Rammstein. So Agent Orange, they are sometimes referred to as part of the big four of Teutonic thrash metal, which includes Creator, Destruction, and Tankard. But I would probably go so far as to trade out one of the big four for Sodom.
Which one?
That's difficult. And I think that it should probably be a topic that we cover in a later episode. Reinventing.
It's Megadeth, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Well, I don't know whether it is, because when I was younger, I absolutely loved me some Megadeth. But going back, they've only got about 2, pushing maybe 3 good records, like that are definitively good records. Other than that,
if you took away the big four accolade from Mustaine,
he'd have nothing.
He'd be taking away his whole life source.
Have you seen him? He's just crying away on Some Kind of Monster.
Yeah.
But so it was recorded in East Berlin, also by Harris Johns, who did the Pestilence record. So this is their 3rd album, I believe. So previously, before that, in 1987, they had Persecution Mania. And this record, Agent Orange, is kind of more where they sided with thrash metal. So previously, they got a lot of flack from people, being described as a second-rate Venom. To be honest, I think Venom are a second-rate Venom now. Oh, yeah. So they essentially changed up their sound quite dramatically in terms of how they presented themselves aesthetically, the style of music that they were playing, and also the lyrical content. So this record is the second record, actually, that featured Frank Blackfire on guitar. Who shortly after this actually left to join Creator. The rest of the band is made up by Tom Angel Ripper, who's on vocals and bass, and Chris Witch Hunter, who who played drums on the record. What's interesting is the fact that it is just a 3-piece band, and that is something that's not reflected in the sound. Like, this is a very loud, dense sounding record. It's not a particularly, like if you take something like the year before, like And Justice for All, which has that quite operatic sound on a few of their tracks. This is not the case. Like, this is a case that comes straight out the gate, and it does absolutely rip. I mean, for me, if you're going to be a thrash band and you're not thrashing within the first couple of tracks, then there's something absolutely wrong with it.
And that first track as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's an absolute stormer.
Yeah. So did they? I don't know if you know this, but did they use overdubs when mixing it, or did they? Was it just loud?
There is no way that they couldn't have. Like, there is a lot of guitar work going on.
Right.
And I think that is down to Frank Blackfire. Like, he completely reinvented it. Like, even if you look at the older records, like, they were relying more on that kind of lo-fi. Like, if you listen to some of their earlier demos, even the artwork, it's very like black and white, obviously just doodled on a piece of paper and then folded around a cassette tape.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that's worth bearing in mind with this record, is how amazing the artwork looks for it. So the artwork is by Andreas Marshall, who's done a fair body of work, actually. And this artwork is definitely something to write home about, because it is absolutely stunning to look at. And it definitely reflects the kind of change in pace that they did with the vocals. So previously they were addressing like occult subject matter. And then apparently Angel Ripper became absolutely obsessed with the Vietnam War, which obviously goes into the fact that the record itself is called Agent Orange.
Yeah.
However, it is also worth noting that not all the lyrics are about the Vietnam War. And if we might digress, I can bring to your attention a song that features on that record called Incest.
Please do.
Right. So it starts off: score to find new ways of love, denounce moralizers, ethic without prohibition and laws, give no credence to church. All right. Satisfaction in the sign of crime. So he acknowledges that it's a crime, but he's still ploughing ahead. Ploughing being
you had me at
word.
new love.
Yeah. The new meaning of my life, there is no sin all down the line, no repentance, pay the price. And you're like, okay, so it's relatively ambiguous
He also knows
right now.
the cost of incest as well.
Absolutely, but it gets a little bit more heated now. So, number one in the list of misdeeds, persuade my sister. So is it consent? Is she
Yeah,
is she fully on board? Yeah.
She has to be persuaded, right?
He's got the gift of the she shook and grasped. I'm not reading that. Turned by mutual whisper, wrapped up in bewitched body shower. Forbidden fruits
like
taste better.
Head and shoulders.
I have no idea. But apparently, so I read a couple of interviews with...
the sister.
Well, no, yeah, she barely talked.
A couple of talking heads.
Yeah. No, I read an interview with Tom Angel Ripper about his lyrical content and also just lyrics in general in terms of how they sound, because having read quite a lot of the lyrics, they don't make a huge amount of sense. And apparently he does write in German, and then has a friend who's an English teacher review them and change them. And I'm just wondering whether, I assume his English, he has a lot better grasp of the English language now than he did in 1989.
Well, I mean, we've all got Google Translate now.
But whether it was even more horrific to begin with, and this English teacher kind of took the brunt of it and then reviewed it and went, yeah, this is verbatim what you wrote previously, and you went, oh yeah, good.
That's, I mean, the first time she heard that song, I wonder what she felt.
It was probably his sister.
Yeah. You done with that one?
Moving on.
Okay, cool. I think of all the records that we're talking about today, this one might be... Oh, I feel like I want to say the best, but I don't think I can say the best. Bolt Thrower, Realm of Chaos, also known as Bolt Thrower, Realm of Chaos, Slaves to Darkness. I I think it's a fantastic record. You do sort of have to give some concessions to not so much the production, but the drumming. Let's just address the elephant in the room. Is that the blast beats on this record aren't entirely in line with the metronome. Not the fact that they use the metronome in the first place. If you omit that from the listening process of the album itself, it's an absolutely incredible album. Like, it is full to the absolute brim with riffs. And some of them are their most popular riffs. I mean, they're a very prolific band, Bolt Thrower, and some of those riffs from Realm of Chaos still set it off today at their shows. Like, people are screaming for World Eater. And I think we've been to a couple of hardcore shows where a lot of the hardcore acts would even start a set with something like World Eater just to get people excited for them, which is also kind of similar to what we've been talking about, indicative between that convergence between hardcore punk, the crust scene, grindcore, and death metal. And I think Bolt Thrower are a fantastic umbrella band for all those different styles. So a little bit of context on the record. It was the second album by Bolt Thrower. It was recorded at Loco Studios in April of 1989 and engineered by Tim Lewis. More importantly, it was produced by Bolt Thrower, but also Digby Pearson, who is one of the co-founders of Earache Records, which Bolt Thrower were part of the roster of. And Digby Pearson had a fucking amazing 1989, I must say. He aided in the production, or sort of exec produced, again, whatever the fuck that means. He aided in the production of, in 1989 alone, of Carcass, Symphonies of Sickness, and he was the exec producer for Morbid Angels, Altars of Madness, and Napalm Death, all within the same year of 1989. So he had a fucking amazing year, that guy. The cover artwork for Realm of Chaos, once again, is a bit of a contentious topic. It was produced by Games Workshop, as were the band's name, and the majority of the origins of Bolt Thrower sort of stem from Games Workshop. It's closely tied with Warhammer 40,000 and Realm of Chaos, Slaves to Darkness was the title of a gaming book that was released in 1988 by Games Workshop. It was released on Earache. In 2005, a reissue was released by Earache featuring new artwork, which I will get into in just a minute. The band itself actually advises not to buy the reissue. As
they're falling out.
Yeah, they've not been involved, and they do not get any royalties. They are not involved, and they will not get any royalties. So on the artwork, Joe from the band said, Games Workshop approached us after the boss had heard one of our Peel sessions, a John Peel session. And it was actually Games Workshop who originally wanted to release Realm of Chaos. Yeah,
they want to release a record.
Well, what I found out was that Games Workshop, I think the head office of Games Workshop was a few doors down from Earache Records. And obviously by showing their appreciation for death metal by listening to John Peel sessions with Bolt Thrower, they actually, I think one of the managers of Games Workshop at the time wanted to set up a label. I think it was called Warhammer Records or something like that. And one of the bands that they wanted on the roster was Bolt Thrower. And I think there was a bit of to and froing, and I think for a while they were actually leaning more towards going towards that label, until Earache sort of came into the fore, and they discussed and they agreed to signing to Earache, because obviously it's an established label. They had a huge backing, and more probably could have come out of working with Earache at the time. At least that was the notion at the time of the release. So Joe said, we felt the distribution would be a lot better through Earache, so we ended up just using their artwork. They had to pay a lot of money to use the artwork, and there were a lot of rules over the copyright and the territories where it was used, but they ended up with the logo that they still use today. And so here's where things get a little bit hairy with Bolt Thrower, with Earache, and with Games Workshop. I don't want to go into the legality of copyright laws by any stretch, because I don't fucking know them. But there was an agreement between Games Workshop and Bolt Thrower to release their record with the original artwork. And at shows, this is amazing, Bolt Thrower were obliged or obligated to, they could sell the record, but in tow with the record, they also had to try and promote Games Workshop and Warhammer, and they used to sell Warhammer products at Bolt Thrower shows.
There's no reputable way of doing that.
No, definitely not.
And this, are they the only band that have had this closer tie with Games Workshop?
I think there was another band, like a Games Workshop band, but nowhere near the gravitas of Bolt Thrower.
Do the lyrics reflect the...
It's all about war. Yeah, it's all about like that 40k content, and that's why Bolt Thrower were for quite some time umming and erring whether to actually just sign to this newfangled Warhammer label. And it is a topic, obviously, that is intrinsic throughout Bolt Thrower's career, but not as physically, not as manifest as in Realm of Chaos. I think Realm of Chaos was just a Games Workshop record. So anyway, Earache's response to what happened after the agreement had come to pass, and after the copyright had expired for the band and Earache, so Games Workshop still held ownership, I believe, of the original artwork, who I think was by an artist called John Blanche or something like that. Earache faced a very harsh decision to either discontinue the album or commission new art by the same artist in a similar style and theme. But they were trying to be careful not to fall foul of copyright laws at the time as well. They said Bolt Thrower themselves were pretty unhelpful by insisting that the original be used in further pressings, but this was impossible as it wasn't ours or their art to use. It was Games Workshop's artwork and copyrights. It was stuck between a rock and a hard place, really, for Bolt Thrower and Earache and things like that. So yeah, it's a Bolt Thrower were not happy about any of this. They wanted to keep the original artwork. They couldn't. There was a solution, which meant that Realm of Chaos could still be printed, but Bolt Thrower wouldn't be receiving any of the royalties in that respect either, because they didn't have any ownership of the record in itself. So what do you do? What do you do in that sort of situation? You either permit your creative output to be listened and consumed, but you're not earning anything from it. And this record, I think, sold about 50,000 worldwide.
Which is a pretty impressive number for...
Yeah, for a Midlands grindy...
From Coventry.
Yeah. I mean, bands like...
I mean, have you been
Sacrilege,
to Coventry?
Yeah. No, I haven't actually.
I have. I've played in Coventry.
How's that?
And, well, it was not a particularly amazing show. However, I think I probably came to the most depressing pub afterwards. So right next to the venue, we played at somewhere called the Phoenix. Right next to it was this pub that stayed open. I'm pretty sure it was 24 hours, but it might have been just until like 7 o'clock in the morning. However, I did end up going to the toilet at that time at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And the only way that I can describe it is it was like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, but the Oompa Loompas have been radicalized, and their main point of attack was that chocolate river, and it was everywhere.
Jesus.
Like, it was everywhere. And there was some poor guy who obviously it happens quite often, because there was some guy who was employed to just stand there and clean up after people like
God.
babies.
Yeah.
And I saw him muttering to himself as he was doing it. And all I had was just the Requiem for a Dream soundtrack just playing on loop in my head.
Fucking hell.
And it was horrendous. Yeah.
It's horrible.
But Coventry, you're full of scum. No, I don't.
Whoa.
Oh, no, I love you. Did you hear that click?
Yeah.
That's everyone unsubscribing from Coventry.
Yeah. So sold 50,000 records worldwide, and I don't think bands like Sacrilege or Discharge or anything like that probably have ever sold
No,
50,000.
nowhere near.
No, so it's a huge feat for an incredible album, one once again marred in controversy over ownership and over artwork. And does it sour the music? No, not really.
We all got over it. They got over it.
I also
pretty quickly.
I also own the post 2004 Realm of Chaos record.
So you did exactly what they told you not to do.
100%. Just
That's what Blogspot's there for.
exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so the last one officially from me is Godflesh Street Cleaner. So yeah, I think Earache were having a very stellar, very strong 1989. I mean, Morbid Angel, Bolt Thrower, and Godflesh, Street Cleaner, which, in my opinion, probably is their best record. It might not be my favourite, but I think it is their best record. The tone is just unreal.
It sounds so heavily processed, but it's
Yeah.
almost to the point of stylism. Like, stylistically,
Yeah.
it is like it's not the fact that the technology that they were using let them down. It feels like everything's very, very considered, and I wouldn't expect anything else from Justin Broderick.
Before Street Cleaner, Godflesh were originally called Fall of Because. And the impetus of Godflesh was there, but it wasn't until the name Godflesh came into fruition that the real Godflesh sound came out, if that makes sense. And it was primarily due to listening to a lot of noise acts from America, and especially with like very early Swans and that sort of anarchic, shambolic precision that they had, that Justin really wanted to sort of bring into the fore with Fall of Because, he would subsequently become Godflesh. The name Street Cleaner itself may have originated from the band White House.
Okay.
It's one of Justin's influences. So
A kind of power electronics.
Yeah, exactly. And it's on their Right to Kill album. They have a song called "The Street Cleaner," which might have influenced them to choose that for their first full-length title. Really, so there's a nice little tie-in there, nice little reference. It was recorded in 3 sessions, and it was shared between Soundcheck Studios in Birmingham and Square Dance in Derby. And it's Rolling Stone's 64th best metal album of all time. Which is kind of like...
Is that
It's quite
true?
clinical.
Because I think that Sodom was the 63rd.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, competition.
I mean, there's been a lot of coincidences coming in this
Yeah.
episode. I'm going to try and rephrase that. There's been a lot of coincidences. Oh, fuck's sake. Fuck it. No.
God.
How can I not say that word?
Is that right, what you were saying?
Let me just have a check. So, Rolling Stones. No. Yeah, I'll accept your GDPR privacy policy. So, what did you say? 64?
64th.
Yeah. 64 is Godflesh Street Cleaner. 63rd is Sodom by is Agent Orange by Sodom. So
do you agree with that?
I don't know.
I'm going to go with Godflesh.
Yeah, I'm probably going to go with Godflesh as well.
As
actually.
the 63rd.
Yeah. Yeah, they're not getting any higher than that. They're not getting past. They're not getting past Sleep.
They're not getting past Sleep?
No,
I think Street Cleaner
62nd
get past Sleep.
Jerusalem Sleep. 61 Converge Jane Doe.
Anyway,
We don't need to go any
we don't need to go
past
any
that.
further. One of the primary reasons as to why it's the best Godflesh album is it came at a time of, once again, what we've been talking about throughout this episode is the convergence of different scenes coming together, and there is a product at the end of it. So with Pestilence or with Repulsion, it would be hardcore and grindcore, metal, death metal, etc., etc. What's interesting about Street Cleaner is its huge influence from early electronic music, and there's more of an inception of hip hop coming out of the mid to late 80s, which is just plastered all over Street Cleaner. It might not be direct or in your face, any of those influences. Like, personally, I would say Street Cleaner has more akin with artists like Jeff Mills or Derek May, part of the Detroit house scene, than it does, say, with other acts on Earache. So like Morbid Angel and Napalm Death and bands like that. And the hip-hop influence, I think, is really, really prominent. And obviously, it's something that Justin explores later in his career with J.K. Flesh and with Techno Animal with Kevin Martin. But I love the fact, the subtlety of those influences in this record. I mean, apparently, Christbait Rising, which also has a music video for it, apparently.
I've never seen that.
No, I don't think I haven't seen that. Is a form of tribute to Eric B. and Rakim, Microphone Fiend. And again, it might not be an overt reference, but it doesn't need to be, because the inference is there. And that's what I love about Street Cleaner as a whole, is that it emulates things with such light precision, despite being such a fucking heavy and gross album and an angry album. It's so angry. I think Justin Broderick has said it was like his most aggressive record. He was lashing out at anything and everything, and he didn't care. And it really does come out on this record, and I absolutely love it. But it's the emulation of hip hop, of techno, of sort of proto power electronics, which once again he returns to later in his career, and he works with Dominic Furno of Hospital Productions as well, Prurient fame. So it's all there, and I absolutely love this record specifically for that convergence of cultures coming out and it being such a subtle record considering how heavy it is. And just to wrap up, I think we might have mentioned that these aren't the only records. As far as our notes suggest, these aren't the only records that were released in 1989.
No, absolutely not.
So there were others, but these are the ones that we've highlighted, put on a pedestal, And very, very quickly, I thought it was quite interesting, considering it is an episode on 1989. Change was most certainly in the air for some bands. One of those bands was Dark Throne. But just to close up here on 1989, I found a review. Now, I'm not defaming the author of this review. I don't want to come across as a bully, but fuck me, this is hilarious.
Well, you know that this is going to be committed to the internet and can be lodged as evidence for defamation of character.
A fuck. Cancel me, whatever. So I found this. It's almost like TripAdvisor-esque review, and I think it's of Thulkandra, which is, just to reiterate, a fucking demo. All right, so relax. This guy, who really, I must admit, has such a way with words. He's able to describe things in a way I don't think I've ever been able to achieve in my own writing. So we'll keep the author anonymous, mainly because I think he kept it, or she kept it anonymous as well.
Where everyone's got an opinion on the internet.
Please edit that out, Matt. I don't really want to have that bit in there. So this is a review of Thulkandra. I'll keep it short and sweet. This is my first real foray into Dark Throne. I've tried before, but I thought it was just Blair. Now I've started with this demo, and I liked it, in brackets, not love it. It's more than okay, but not really great. So he then goes on to, the first problem I have with this demo is the vocals. They are annoying, and I hate them.
Is that in capitals?
Yeah. With an exclamation mark as well.
Oh, shit.
I'm glad that those are sparsely and rarely used. The first track doesn't have them. A relief indeed. One thing I admire about this band is that although they have released some very good records, technically speaking, they left this direction and enter the black metal sphere, proving that music is not dictated by the technicity of a song, but by the mood it creates. So while listening to this band's later outputs, I realised what a slap in the face these guys give to the ones that listen, composed to the music. Just for the sake of complexity and disregarding the magic that the music is creating. Music isn't notes. The notes are music.
Oh, God.
So that, I guess, concludes
1989. What a wonderful year.
Yeah.
And the first episode.
We're hoping that this is going to be on multiple platforms as well. We haven't got to that extent yet, but fingers crossed that if you type in Ex Inferis, you will...
in any of the major social media sites.
Yeah. So we'll be setting up a Twitter. We'll be setting up a Twitter. We have a Facebook page, Ex Inferis.
Ex Inferis podcast. And we also have a Instagram, which is just Ex Inferis podcast again. So you can find us there.
Awesome.
So anyway, that rounds us out.
Right. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.